What about the, it's a little bright. I think that's good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. Tonight, we have somebody very special with us that clearly does not need an introduction. Being born and raised in the city of Oxnard and then joining the Oxnard Police Department and working through the ranks out of a very impressive 30-plus year career, 9 of those years being an assistant police chief. In 2014, things got a little bit interesting when he was asked to be assistant city manager in the city manager's office under former city manager Greg Nyhoff. In 2016, he was named Oxnard police chief. During that time, he has done amazing work reaching out to faith-based leaders, working closely with our youth, and really emphasizing on hiring homegrown officers. Joining me tonight is Oxnard Police Chief Scott Whitney. Chief.
Hi, Daniel. How are you? Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you for joining me. I know you're a very busy man, keeping our cities very safe. Yes. And it's very much appreciated. You and your leadership and your officers all doing great work. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So let's dive right into it. You were born and raised in the city of Oxnard, and you still have family that live here. So share with us a little bit about that.
Both my parents were born in North Dakota. When their ancestors came, I'm giving you the long version. When their ancestors came over, they directed them to North Dakota because of the similar climate from the country they came from. They were farmers. They also moved with the crops from state to state. My dad, there was not a lot of opportunities there. He didn't think so. When he turned 18, he joined the service. After the service, he ended up in Oregon. That's where he met my mom. My dad's brother was in construction and in Southern California. In the 60s, Southern California was, expanding the suburbs. So he talked my dad to moving down to Southern California. So they ended up they lived in Los Angeles first for a few years. My dad was working construction, building fireplaces in North Oxnard. And the very last fireplace he built, his boss said, "All right, works until we sell this house. We're going to be off, no work. Got to sell this house to build the next one." And my dad said, "Well, how much is it?" And so my dad bought that house in 1961. So that's how like I ended up here. I was born a few years after that. But one of the things I like to tell people is he was able to buy that house with, after taxes, 1 week's salary. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and just kind of show you like how things have changed. But that was North Oxnard. I like to tell stories also because I think it puts things in perspective, and then I also think it can guide like maybe also a better future for Oxnard. One of the things I tell people is, so not nearly as many cars on the street then, but I was able to, as a kid, my parents were fine with it, I was able to ride my bike to Wagon Wheel Bowl, was able to ride my bike to Northside Little League, Fremont School, the Oxnard Library, which is, it's a different place now, the beach, just all over the city. There's no parents that would allow their kids to do that nowadays. you know. We don't have the open spaces that we had then. So those are some of the things that, and you know, people may think, well, how does that have to do with, you know, being a police officer or police chief? I actually think it's really closely related. You know, we need to have opportunities for our youth. We need to, our city is too crowded. The roads are not made for, you know, the number of people we have. So it's different than it was when I grew up. And we need to figure out ways to make it safer so that families can feel comfortable with their kids, you know, going, finding an open space or riding their bicycles, you know, as simple as that. So, you know me, Daniel, I could go on and on about that, but I'll take a breather so you can ask them the next question. But I'd love to just expand on that as much as you want.
Yeah, of course. So, growing up in Oxnard, like you mentioned, you were able to ride your bike all over town. You went to local schools in the Oxnard school district. Which schools did you go to? Because I know a lot of people, they like to know where everyone goes to school growing up. So what
Yep.
school did you attend?
Yep. So I went to Ramona Elementary, first, second, and third. And then I went to, Paul's adjusting my camera here. So I think Paul's actually listening, our community affairs manager. So Paul, send in an easy question. He's trying to adjust the lighting, I think, so you guys can see it better. Ramona Elementary, first, second, and third. Sierra Linda, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Fremont for junior high, and then Oxnard High School. Yellow Jacket. I saw on one of your prior podcasts here, you're a Viking, which is cool. I respect the Vikings.
Yeah, last week we had Gabe Turan on, and
Yeah.
luckily he wasn't a CI, so I continued the interview. So I guess I'll continue the interview with you also.
Yeah. I have two brothers and two sisters, and we all essentially went to the same schools. We all graduated from Oxnard and Fremont, but my sisters went to Santa Clara Elementary.
Now, I don't want to date you, but was it the old Oxnard High School or the new Oxnard High School?
No, the old, no. I wish. You're not dating me. That it was the old Oxnard High School. Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
Which is, you know, that's related. Like, oh my gosh, like our city needs. We need to do something with that vacant space there. So that's for somebody that went to that high school. It's heartbreaking to see that land, you know, prime land, and a neighborhood that needs something positive there, just, you know, not being used to its full potential.
Well, see, that answered my question that I was about to ask you. So was, how did that make you feel seeing that land? You know, it used to be full of buildings. Then they started knocking the buildings down. Now you're seeing overgrown weeds, and it's kind of just sitting idle for a number of years. As long as I can remember, it has always been kind of a vacant land. What are your ideas for that land? If somebody said tomorrow, all your ideas will come true for that land, what would your idea be for that land?
So there's several things. One, the immediate neighborhood there has some plans for it, which I think are good. I'm not up to speed on all of the plans, so I'll just keep it very basic. I also think the city has a grant to develop a park there. Previously, though, when the city was struggling, I don't even think the city would have been able to develop it with the grant because they wouldn't have had the money to water it or to upkeep it. Hopefully, we're in a different position now. So I think there's some good ideas with the neighborhood group, but I only know them at a very basic level. I would like to see like every single neighborhood park that I go to that has the nice soft top walking track. Every single neighborhood I go to that has that, no matter what time of day I drive by it, people are always walking the track. At my age, I don't run anymore. Unless I have to, but I'm a walker and love to walk too. And so something as like just open space. Open space does amazing things for our minds. There's so many benefits that we don't even know the full benefits of it. Open space, walking tracks. Love to see a place, the skateboard park at Oxnard College. Again, something else that kids come from all over the area, even from outside Oxnard to go to the skate park. What does that say? That says that there's a need for that. We need another skate park there. The dog park that is there is not in good shape. There's no dog parks I've seen that are in that bad a shape. Compare that to the dog park in River Park. We can have a really nice dog park. You can do those at a relatively low expense. And then, like I said, just open space. And I don't want to contradict what any of the neighborhood groups, the idea that they have, and this is clearly not my area of expertise, but there's so much that could be done that is 100 times better than what's there now.
So growing up in Oxnard, and then you decided so after graduating high school, what was the next step?
So I was good in school. I knew I would be like good in the workplace just because like parents taught me you work hard. Felt like I was always a conscientious person. So you work hard, you're conscientious, you do good in school, so you're smart. I always knew that I was going to do well, but I didn't know like where I was going to land. I was in a engineering program that they offered to high school students at Oxnard High at the base. So I was in that engineering program. One of the things that taught me is, okay, I don't want to be an engineer because that wasn't my interest. I didn't want to, the funny thing is I didn't want to have a desk job, and essentially the last 20 years of my career I've had a desk job. So I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. And really my number one interest was sports. Football, baseball first as a kid, and then that evolved to football. So it's kind of my parents were working class, didn't have money for college. In those days, I didn't really think college was an option, short of getting a football scholarship. So that's where my interest was. I had some. This is just the brutal world we live in of college sports. I had some offers to some big time schools to attend on a football scholarship. And then the last week of the season, I broke my lower leg, and the 2 bones in my lower leg. So yeah, all the coaches, that had previously offered me scholarships called and said, hey, sorry, you're not going to be able to play football anymore. So I ended up going to junior college, Ventura. I played there. And so really the football scholarship was kind of like my ticket to higher education. So I ended up going to the University of Oregon on a football scholarship. Again, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career at that point. So I figured, well, I'll get a degree in business because no matter what I do, that will be helpful. So I got my primary subject area was finance, and then a secondary subject area in accounting. And that's what I got my degree in. The funny thing is when I started at the police department, they would give you a 10% additional pay if you had a degree in a field that was related. And they said, no, that's not, finance and accounting is not related to policing, so you're not going to get that extra pay. And if I had the opportunity, in 2015, 25 years later, when I presented the city's budget, I wanted to say, hey, look, it's related to my job. So anyways, that's how I got into college, why I got that degree. I got a job in finance after college, and I just had it for a few months because I really did not like it. It, kind of reminded me of the desk job, the engineering job. And my older brother was a police officer, and he said, you should go out on a ride along with me. And I said, no, that's not like my style. I don't want to be a police officer. And he said, oh, don't knock it until you actually like see it. And it was on that ride along, like I knew instantly that was the career for me, that's what, in a sense, that's what I was meant to do.
Now, was it a call that sparked that interest, or was it just the feeling of being in a patrol unit and, being part of that ride along?
Yeah, no, it was several things. I just felt like every single day every single day at work, he was making a positive impact. We had gone to a domestic violence call, and he made an arrest for domestic violence. He made an arrest for drunk driving. And then we went to a call of a prowler, somebody that was looking in this woman's window. And the description was it was a very good description. The clothes, height, weight, age, everything. And we went to the area, checked it out, and we saw somebody that matched the description, like to a T. And I was like, oh, when you're like brand new, it's like, and your first ride along, it's like, oh, this is so cool. This is awesome. And then we did the what's called the infield show up, where you see on TV where they kind of shine the light on the suspect, and then the victim comes out and either IDs or doesn't ID. And the victim wasn't able to identify the person as the suspect, that was, messing around with their windows. And I told him, I said, see, this is why I couldn't be an officer. I'd be like so frustrated. And he says, no, just wait. It's not over yet. And he's talking to the guy for like 5 minutes, shining like light in his eyes and stuff. And he puts handcuffs. He's like, go wait over by the car. He puts handcuffs on the guy. And I was like, hey, what'd you do? She said that she couldn't ID. And he says, well, no, he's using crack cocaine. And I was like, oh, wow, holy smokes. So anyways, that was those are kind of the three instant calls that I remember from that ride along. And after that, it was just kind of like fell in my lap, because it was shortly after that the department was hiring, and so I was able to go through the process, and it worked out well.
Now, your bio that you have on the website says that you worked your way through the ranks, from patrol all the way to where you're at today. Can you say which departments you worked in, and maybe which one you enjoyed more than others?
Yeah. I love to talk about that. How much time do we have?
Well, I have a planning commission meeting at 6, so if it gets a little too long, I'll throw the little hook.
I'll keep that in mind. I love talking about it. So I started, I started the academy in 1992. We got a new chief, Harold Hurt, came from Phoenix. And we had at that time, at Cooper Road and Hayes Avenue, we had in our city like what was called like an open air drug market. There was this hand-to-hand drug transactions on a regular basis. And the chief decided we're going to open up a police storefront. First one in the city, first one in the county. And, I was a fairly new officer. And, I was approached by, somebody in the upper ranks, and that person said, I think you should put in for the storefront position. You would be good at that. And, I'm always looking to do something different. And that's one of the things that, like, top 3 things that I've loved about this job is every like 4 years been able to do something different. So I started working at the storefront late 92. And when you're brand new as a police officer, it's kind of like those 3 calls I was talking about. You think that you simplify things and there's good guys and bad guys, and everything's black or white. The storefront taught me that it's not that simple. And most officers kind of learn this after a few years on the job. I would go to community meetings ready to talk about gang violence and the homicide numbers and the drug arrests that we made. And the community, they would listen patiently and respectfully. But the reality is most of the complaints in that neighborhood, because very few people are actually like a victim of a crime, especially a violent crime, very few people, but many people are negatively impacted by quality of life issues. And so that was one of the things I learned in the storefront, is that idea of quality of life. And you think, well, what does that translate to? It's like the homeless and the vagrancy, complaints that we get. No matter, and we don't go to the neighborhood council meetings anymore because of COVID, but everyone that I went to as a chief before then, that was always the number one concern. The number one complaint is the negative consequences that are associated with homelessness. The vagrancy, just all the litter, all the human waste, people that are suffering from mental illness and drug dependent. So I learned that part of it. The quality of life issues, that's what people are most concerned about. And so as a police department, if we're going to be a good police department, it's more than just driving down the crime stats. You have to be responsive to those issues. Second thing I learned, and I think it was good as a young officer, is that people they have to know that the police department and police officers have their back. That they know who the officer is, they trust the officer. Some communities, some neighborhoods, they can take it for granted. You take that for granted. That's the reality. There are other neighborhoods, sometimes it's just certain blocks. If the police department, because what we do is we go out and we respond to where the problems are. And so if there's a gang problem in a certain neighborhood, there's going to be more police presence in that neighborhood, and that's what the residents want. But a negative consequence of that is you're arresting more people from the neighborhood, and every person you arrest, has many family members. And so what that translates to is sometimes in neighborhoods where officers see themselves as doing the most work, working the hardest, putting themselves on the line the most, those are often neighborhoods that are most suspicious of the police department. And that's just normal, it's natural. And so how do you solve that puzzle? Well, it's the relationships. And so I learned early on that just walking door to door. And even though when I started, I wasn't fluent in Spanish, and many of the people were monolingual Spanish, even if you know just a little bit and you put the effort, people give you the benefit of the doubt. They love the fact that you're trying. But very quickly, I developed some Spanish speaking skills and was able to connect to the residents, and you find out what their concerns are, and it works both ways. They are now comfortable with you. They trust you. They know that you have their best interests in mind. And then also they will tell you, everybody in the neighborhood and neighborhoods knows who's committing the crimes, who needs to go to jail, and who doesn't. And if you have those conversations and they tell you that, it clears things up for the police. So we can focus in on the offenders and not the other people. So that was that assignment. In 1993, I got on the SWAT team also. But that SWAT assignment was just a collateral assignment. It wasn't like a full-time. My full-time job was still as a storefront officer, but the SWAT assignment meant one day a month we trained. And if there was like a high risk incident, then we would come out because we had the special training. Well, in 1995, one of our officers was killed by another SWAT officer, Jim Jensen. And we learned then that just training once a month wasn't enough. That if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And that meant that we were going to do more training. And that was a big focus for me in 1996 when I became a sergeant. So in 1996 I was a sergeant. I became a supervisor. One of my jobs was training sergeant for the SWAT team. Sounds like a fun job. It was not fun because it was just all business, and we put so much sweat into becoming a better, more proficient team. Expanded the training, sent people out to bring the good ideas in. So I was a training sergeant there. Backtrack in 1995, I became a detective in our narcotics unit. So I worked about 20 months. That was up until I became a sergeant, about 20 months in our narcotics unit. That was interesting and in some ways like a fun job. I had a shaved head and facial hair and earrings. And I remember, you forget, because your immediate family just gets used to you. And you forget, you look different. I hadn't seen my sister in a while, and I saw her at, Devonshire and Ventura Road. She was going into the grocery store there. And I pull up next to her. I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" And she was so scared just because of my look, like this stranger pulling up next to her and trying to talk to her. And I'm like, "Jackie, it's Scott," and a few months later, I knock on my mom's door. And she's looking out through the peephole, and she's like, "Who is it?" And I'm like, "Mom, it's Scott." She's like, "No, it isn't." So that was an interesting.
There's pictures of that.
What's that?
There has to be pictures, right?
Yeah, there is, and I may post one. I'm not sure. I'll probably post one at some point before I leave at the end of the year. So that was 20 months. That I always like to have like learning points from these assignments. And one of the things I learned from that is local police departments are not going to they're not going to change the supply of drugs coming into this country. And a lot of times police departments and police officers just try to arrest the biggest supplier, the biggest dealer. And, it's similar to our residents are more interested in the quality of life issues. It's the same when it comes to drug dealers. If you have a drug dealer that is right next door to you and there's traffic constantly, that has a huge impact on the quality of life for you and the immediate neighborhood. And if I was spending all my time trying to, go to another state or out of country to impact the flow of drugs into Oxnard, it's like drops of water in the ocean, versus we would knock out drug houses, like local drug houses regularly, and the neighbors, it's like night and day when you do that. Suddenly the neighbors are willing to come outside again. They're willing to let their kids play on the front yard. So that was one of the things that I got job satisfaction out of that. 2001, I became a commander. That's the next rank after sergeant. That was the year that our officers shot and killed Arthur Jones. He was a person that was suffering from mental illness, in possession of a knife. His mom called the police department. She was afraid. Our officers got there. We ended up, unfortunately, getting into a shooting, and our officers killed him. There were several other officer-involved shootings at that time in regards to persons suffering from a mental illness and in possession of weapons. So their family members were fearful. I was a brand new commander. One of the assistant chiefs said, "Hey, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm giving you the assignment. Come up with a new approach to how we're going to respond to these calls." So I went up to San Jose for a CIT class, crisis intervention training. I came back. I worked with the county, city of Ventura, and we created our own crisis intervention academy. So now we train all of our police officers that work out in the field, go through this 40-hour academy on how to better respond to persons that are suffering from a mental illness. The reality in our business is we evolve incrementally, just like everybody else. In our community, there's nobody that's perfect, and we hire people from within the community. Therefore, we hire imperfect people. There's so much that's being put on the shoulders of police departments and police officers to solve. And I was talking just before this, I was talking to a CLU class about this exact incident, telling them the numbers of calls that we respond to every year. Over 3,000 persons with a weapon. It was about 350 persons threatening suicide, over 850 violent crimes in the city, which is shootings, stabbings, rapes, robberies, or homicides. Over 850 of those combined. So it's an active city, and our officers, 99 point, whatever percent of the time, they resolve them peacefully. And CIT is one portion of that is held. So that was 2001 when I got promoted to commander. A year later, I was still a commander, but I went and became the commander for special operations, which is the SWAT team, the K-9 unit, the violent crimes task force. So going back to this idea of being mission driven, we were really geared towards driving down violent crime, and we did a good job of that. Violent crime, particularly gang crime, went down significantly during that time. It's a very simple formula. You use the good intel you have, the good relations you have with the community, and you find, and then the officer's contacts, you find out who the violent offenders are. Everybody in the community knows who they are. They trust the police. They will tell you who they are, and then those are the ones that you arrest. We don't harass people. We don't focus on the little stuff. And then, but a second part to this strategy was we were going to do what we could, leverage our resources to also provide, mentoring opportunities to young kids that were identified from the schools as like being at risk, working with them to do positive things, giving them, alternatives. So I was proud of that. Also, as a commander in that assignment, I worked with the county on an initiative. It's called JDAI, Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative. There's also another acronym for a another project was called RED, R-E-D, Reducing Ethnic Disparities. And we worked as a county. I was the one representing Oxnard and much of the municipal cities on reducing the number of kids that were in the juvenile facility. The old juvenile hall used to be like close to county hospital. It was kind of too small for the number of people they had in there. They created they built a new juvenile facility over in El Rio off of Vineyard that was, I don't know, made for like maybe 3 or 4, somewhere between 300 and 400 juveniles. And Daniel, you're probably too young for this, but they called it the coming storm of juvenile violent offenders, something like that. There's all this fear of these super predators, these juveniles. So the county built this big, huge facility. Well, through the efforts of this county-wide group, the number of kids in the juvenile facility now, I think, is in the 60s. They have wings that are not even open because we raised the threshold for kids to get into the facility. And people might say, yeah, but that means they're committing more crimes. No, they're not. Juvenile crime's actually going down. So that's been a positive for our county, where it's a measured approach. We go after the violent offenders. Everybody believes that the violent offenders, because it causes so much havoc, need to be incarcerated. Everybody else, we're all fans of some other alternative to that. 2006, I became an assistant chief within the police department. My first job was administration. And so basically administration is hiring. That's where I made the decision, okay, we are going to hire as many people from our city as we can, just because there's so many benefits from that. Hiring, accountability as far as like investigations, the budget, boom, that's where that degree comes from. That didn't apply, right? So that was my job then. And so it's interesting when you look back on a career, some of it is just, it's kind of like the hand that you're dealt. Like there was the issue of the need for CIT. I went to the special operations, which dealt with gangs. I had the opportunity to work in the storefront to connect with the community. So I was, like you said, 2006, became an assistant chief. In 2014, we had a new city manager that had started the year before. He essentially got rid of a lot of upper management. I didn't know, I had never met him before. And my boss at the time, Jerry Williams, said, hey, city manager wants to talk to you. And I was like, oh, well, why does, I had never talked to him before. And she said, I don't know. And so I went over, I talked to him for about an hour. He told me that the challenges, it was a Friday, he told me the challenges that they were facing, what he was trying to do, the fact that he needed help up there. He needed somebody that he could trust and that Jerry had recommended me. And he said, do you want to help? And I said, yes. Like, took me about like a second. And he says, well, don't you want to like think about it over the weekend? And I said, no. And he says, don't you want to know what you're going to be doing? And I said, no. And he says, why is that? And I said, well, because I know that there's challenges in the city. We appreciate you trying to tackle them. I know that police department is well run. My boss wouldn't have recommended me for this if she didn't think that she could loan me out. And I like new challenges, so I said, yeah, I'll do it. It was an interim assignment at that time. Eventually turned into a permanent assignment because you can only be an interim for a certain amount of time. I didn't feel like the things that he had, like the challenges we were going to tackle together were done at that point, and I felt like I could be of more help there in city management. So I stayed on, and then in 2016, when Jerry Williams went to Phoenix, he asked me, are you interested in being the police chief, or do you want to stay as the assistant city manager? And as quickly as I had answered him before, I said, do you really have to ask that? And he's like, what do you mean? You want to be the chief? I said, yeah. So I had a long conversation then with Jason Benitez, because I felt that he could have been the chief then. After that conversation, I talked to Greg and said, yeah, I want to step up and be the police chief. And so that's what I've been doing since.
Wow. Again, very impressive career over the years. And so I'm going to backtrack a little bit and go and ask you a couple of questions on a few of the things that you brought up over your time. The storefront end up being in a community that typically has already a set image when it comes to law enforcement. It can't be trusted. How hard, or the challenges of really trying to reach out to the public? I know you said you did the door knocking, you really did try to reach out to them, but how difficult and discouraging was it in the beginning when people weren't comfortable enough to actually speak with you?
So this is a surprise to like most people. It was not hard at all. People are often afraid, especially if they don't speak the dominant language. People will be afraid of somebody in uniform if there's a crisis. If they're a victim of a crime, they're often afraid to come to the station, or they're afraid to call 911 because they don't know what they're going to get. But it's just like anything. If you offer somebody your hand, like you're going to, we don't do it with COVID, but if you're going to offer somebody your hand to shake their hand, boom, automatically puts them at ease, right? It's part of why we have that custom. It's the same thing. Like within a month or two, you get a reputation for the community. Word travels fast. Boom, you can trust these officers. Travels fast. And then when you knock on their door and they just look, you can tell by people's posture, by the look on their face, the fact that I'm like struggling to, have a conversation here, but I'm doing my best. And the first thing you say is, hi, I'm a new officer in this area. I just want to talk to you about what your concerns are. How are we doing? And then boom, the relationship is there. They trust you. You get to know their kid. The kids are never afraid. They come up, you start like passing out stickers. It's like the best investment ever, because one way to get the older brothers to trust you is to connect with the younger brothers. So it's actually a lot easier than people suspect. And sometimes there's this mantra that often goes unchecked, this idea that, oh, everybody's afraid of the police. And I say, that's not where I'm going. I still do foot patrols, not as many now with COVID, but I go to the neighborhoods that have the highest housing concentration. And there's always a correlation between that and where, oftentimes the most crime is. And those are, the traditional mindset is those are the people that are going to be most afraid of the police. I don't see it. I don't see it. They open with me. They want more policing, not less. When you're living in the middle of it, you know where your real threats are. But we have to do our part for that. We have to earn, the trust and respect. Not all neighborhoods you don't have to. Like I said earlier, so sometimes it's just automatic. But some neighborhoods you have to earn it.
I want to ask about the CIT. You said you went up to San Jose, got the training, brought it back, worked with the county, Ventura, and created your guys' own program. Now officers go through a 40-hour training program. Now, is that an annual thing that they end up going through a refresher course, or is that a one-time shot and they'll never see it again?
Yeah, the 40-hour is one time because it's super expensive to do that. But we do have like refresher courses, and unfortunately, officers put those skills into practice, every single day, unfortunately. And when you learn how to talk to people, it's a great skill to have, but once you develop that skill and you learn it, you're practicing it every day. So you don't necessarily need the 40-hour academy, but refresher courses are good.
Now, the transition between the city manager's office and then back to the police department. Now, in between that, 2005, that's when I started getting involved with the city. So when I first met you, you were in the city manager's office. Your hair wasn't so luscious as it is now, but how was that feeling of moving from the police department where, you work with these people in the police department every day. Now you have to work with the entire city. You're dealing with the public. You're getting both the negative and the positive from the public. How did that feel?
Yeah, that's a great question. My gosh, you're asking me like these 30-minute answer questions. You should have a timer on here. Just give me the 3-minute timer. You know why I had my head shaved? Because every weekend I could just shave my head because I was like so busy in the city manager's office. I was doing every single thing I could to minimize the distractions. And every weekend I would just shave my head and then boom, on the mornings I didn't have to worry about it. Didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. So I was trying to simplify things. But going over there, I saw that there's a lot of first impressions. First impression was going over to the fourth floor. We would complain about the technology here, like we were behind the times, but going over the fourth floor, they were like a decade even behind us in the technology. So, to the point where I would do a Google search and, the clock is on the computer. Not every now and then like it is here, but regularly over there. I would send something here. I send something to the computer or to the printer, and I go over there to pick it up. And by the time I'm there, it's done printing if it's like 1 or 2 pages. There, I would send something to the printer. I'd go and wait and wait and wait and wait. And it wouldn't even get sent to the queue to the printer for like 5 minutes. And I was like, what? How's this possible? And they said, well, it has to go into the city queue. And so it's got to wait its turn in the city for the city system. So it was just, I saw early on the under investment in the city. I tell people all the time, no matter what city you go to, the last thing that they're going to cut when times are tough are police and fire, because that's what the community wants. That's the most basic service that cities provide, is public safety, the most basic. And so any city council, any city manager, that's generally one of the last things that's going to be cut. So it's easy. It was easy for me to see the underinvestment in, like, that was just a simple example of technology, but an underinvestment in training, underinvestment in people, the how few people there were working in the city manager's office to like run this $500 million organization. And so you see it like firsthand, up close, and it was so obvious. I saw so in the same, when I said that police is the last thing that they're going to cut, that's the external services, right? The services that are provided to the outside. When cities are struggling financially, oftentimes, or at least this is what I saw in Oxnard firsthand, is they were cutting to keep the outward services. They're cutting not only the training, but the people on the inside. So finance is underinvested. Technology is underinvested. Human resources is underinvested. Well, how long can you go before that catches up to you? So I saw that from a lot of different perspectives. But I also saw like the same thing I knew in the police department and the other departments, like genuinely good people that are like working hard for the city. And one of the things that I would say is, like, you can have, like Eric Sonsgaard says this all the time, you can have several things that are all true at the same time, where all you do is spend money on police and fire, and you have really good people that are doing, that are working hard, and we're underperforming. I get like residents, I get frustrated with the level of service, the easy things to see, the parks, the medians, the slow response times from police and fire. So all of those things can be true. And one of the things that I like about this program, Daniel, is, okay, we have to figure out, you can be frustrated and be like the 2-year-old that has a tantrum, or you can be frustrated and you can try to roll up your sleeves and do something positive. The tantrum I have not seen it work in 30 years, but the rolling up the sleeves, I love this. I love the fact that you're talking about issues, ideas, you're bringing people on. That's why I say, if I'll work with anybody in the city that really genuinely wants to roll up their sleeves and do good for the city. It's one of the, I'm sorry, I was just talking for an hour and a half with CLU kids, and I don't remember if we talked about it here or if you mentioned it, but the work that we're doing with the faith community, my dad family was Presbyterian, my mom's family was Catholic. By the time they got to me, they didn't raise us in a church. I didn't grow up being a religious person. So sometimes, like, people that know me are like, why are you working with all the faith leaders? And people that don't know me think that I'm a very like religious person. The reality is, although I'm like spiritual person and I believe that there's a lot of wisdom there, the faith leaders are like one group where you bring a diverse group of, it's like symbolic. It is like very practical, and then it's also symbolic. You bring people that have like widely divergent beliefs on some of the most important issues in our lives. And then we work together. We work together on common problems to make Oxnard better. And so if we can do that with these, faith groups, they're all good people. We know historically there's clashes. That can expand like to so many different areas. And you see it, pockets of people that are doing good work in Oxnard. I just think we model the way and we try to do more of that.
Awesome. 2016, you become the chief of police. Former police chief Jerry Williams goes back to Phoenix PD, assumes the chief position over there. Now you're taking over the top law enforcement position in the city after 5 tragic events. There was 5 officer-involved shootings leading up to 2016. What were the challenges to try to rebuild the image of the police department, to regain the trust from the public? Because there was a lot of protesting going on. There was a lot of groups created out of nowhere, trying to turn the police department, make it seem that they were just evil, gun trigger happy. How are those challenges for you as the new police chief coming in and really trying to change that?
So for somebody that had been like a student of policing, I felt for 26 years up to that point, that's like I'm chomping at the bit to take on those challenges, especially toward the end of my career, and putting some things in perspective. When I was at the city manager's office, the problems were like all around me, 360 degrees. Within the police department, the challenges, you can see the challenges within your field of view. I was going to talk about my wife being killed in a car accident in 1998, because everything pales in comparison to that. And so when you get past something like that, people say, "Oh, Scott, you're like, ever seem to be stressed out about anything?" It's like, "Oh, yeah, well, because everything else pales compared to that." So the challenges like that, I felt like I was the right person at the right time. And everybody, no matter, in my experience, no matter what neighborhood I went to in the city, everybody wants the same thing. They want their families, their loved ones to feel safe. They want to, Eric's giving me this look like I'm just going on and on and on. So at least he's watching. I told Eric, hey, type in some softball questions or something.
I haven't seen any, so there's
okay. Awesome. Can you see who's watching?
I can see a count, and
okay.
When people jump on and they say
okay.
watching, but
I told my wife, I'm like, you better be watching, because I'm gonna get a report when I get home. But so everybody wants the same thing out of their police departments. They want to feel safe. They want their families to feel safe. They want their kids to have a better future. They want to, like I said before, they want to be able to trust the officers and know that the officers are going to respond, take their issues seriously, and that they can be trusted. So everybody wants that. So there's nothing like, we're never going to do anything just to like check a box, like, oh, we have to do this because of that. No, we're gonna focus in on being a good professional police department. And what does that mean? It means we improve community safety, and that is related to crime. It's related to what I was talking about earlier with traffic safety. A new issue is the opioid problem, the homelessness, the decriminalization of a lot of lower level crimes. That's one, making our community safer. Two, earning the trust and respect of our residents. That was goal number 2. Goal number 3 was address quality of life concerns from our residents. I was talking about that earlier. People that are drinking and disturbing in the alleys, stuff like that. Goal number 4, create a culture of success within the police department. That is related to professionalism. It's related to accountability. It's related to always having best practices, always being at the front end of the change and not at the back end of the change. So we talked it through, we roll up our sleeves, we have these high expectations, we hold our people accountable, we communicate these, we reward the good positive behavior, and you hire good, conscientious people that work hard and you have these goals, it takes care of itself, and the community sees that, and you're out in the community connecting, they see it. And so it's not rocket science. Doesn't mean that it's easy to do, because it takes a lot of work. You have to be patient, you have to be present, you have to work hard, but it's good work, it's good police work.
I know since you've been the chief of police, there's been a lot of community events. They started doing Santa at the station, the Halloween, most recently the car club show that took place. Great community event things that really build that trust and that unity between law enforcement and the community. Because at the end of the day, and as you mentioned multiple times, many of the officers are born and raised here. These are hometown heroes, essentially, in serving the police department and our community. After an impressive 30-year career, but before I get to that, I do want to just briefly touch on the fact that, and you brought it up, your late wife, Detective Whitney, she was involved in a car accident. If you want to just briefly touch on that.
Yeah, sure. So it happened in 1998. It's like, it's weird. Still have sometimes a hard time talking about it. And I had gone like 3 years, 2001, Sheriff's Department asked me to come. They were doing a competition. They were giving out the Lisa Whitney Award, and they wanted me to give that out, and they wanted me to talk about it. And I had thought about what I was going to talk about. And 3 years had passed. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. I could talk about it. And soon as I started talking about it, boom, the waterworks are going, and you feel bad when you show up and you like start crying in front of people because you think you're like unloading all of this trauma, all of this sadness on others, and like there wasn't a dry eye in the house, but it was cathartic. It was helpful. The more you talk about it, the more helpful it is. I think it's good to talk about her because it keeps her, her memory alive. My mother-in-law, her mom, I still have a great relationship with, talk to her all the time. I doubt she's watching, but I'm gonna have her watch this on the recording. So I'll tell her, hey, go to hour and 5 minutes into it. But we had met in the academy. She was a really good deputy. She was a mounted enforcement officer. So she rode the horse. She was a detective, sex crimes detective. She was on her way to interview a victim of a sexual assault when the driver drove through a red light. and it was devastating. It was devastating. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to, stay in the profession because we had met in the academy. But fast forward, there's a lot of hard work. You just got to convince yourself to get through the day, convince yourself to put on a happy face. Then you get through a day, you get through a week, you get through several weeks, a month. Eventually, if you're able to get through all that, and I think it can make you a better and stronger person. And I feel like I'm there now. I think it helped me make me a better boss, a better dad, better chief. So don't have a choice. You just have to move on and get stronger from it.
Thanks for sharing that, Chief. I'm sure it's still, a difficult subject. What made you now decide that now was the time to retire from the police department, to retire from the profession? Again, you had a very impressive 30 years. You're still young. I'm sure you can keep going for many more years, but what led you to say, you know what, this is the time? Did you meet all your goals that you set out for yourself when you took the position and say, okay, I'm good?
Yeah, that's another great question. I had always planned on, I don't know, I just think in round numbers, either 25 or 30 years. When you become a chief, there's no more balance. People talk about life balance your personal life with your work life. There's no balance as the chief. I was at every event after work and on the weekends. And I told my family, every job up to the police chief, like I felt like I balanced everything. I told my wife, for me to be a good chief, it means that I have to be at all of these events, which I love, but there's a consequence, a price to that, which there's not enough time for family. I said, but it's for a finite amount of time. It's not, not going to do this till I'm 65 years old. I didn't know exactly when it was going to be, because you also have to pick the time. Obviously, I couldn't leave when I was the interim city manager. There's no good time there. Alex, our city manager, came in 2018. 2.5 years he's been here. I feel like he's solid. He's doing good work for the city. And I ask people, even if you don't like every single thing that he's done, he's doing good work for the city. So we need to back him. I feel confident there. Jason Benitez, he's going to be our next chief. Him and I were promoted to assistant chiefs in 2006. So he's been a chief in waiting longer than anybody I've known. He's going to be solid. I don't worry about that. You say, did you accomplish all your goals? Well, I told you what our four goals have been. Those have been my 4 goals as the chief. In some ways, I don't feel like I have any unfinished business here. And so I say this metaphorically, but I think I'm going to actually physically pass a baton off to Jason. And so when I pass that baton off to him, if you practice, and what I mean by that is you have an internal person that knows what's going on. We've been on the same page for so long. He's not going to miss a stride when he gets it. And so I feel really good about that. I also know that I want to take a break in my professional life. For the last 20 years, I have not I have not had the luxury of not having a cell phone, by my bed. So 20 years and, always having a cell phone. They used to be really big. Used to have the pagers. But it's going to be nice to decompress for a short amount of time. The wisdom in the profession is don't retire until you have something else lined up, and that's just like not my style. I wanted to be all in here, and then I want to take a break, decompress, and then figure out what my next chapter, what my next challenge is going to be.
I want to ask you, I got two more questions. This election year was very different. Since I've known you over the past 5-6 years, you've kind of distanced yourself from anything that deals with elections. But this year, you actually took an active role with Measure E. What was the driving force behind that for you to get involved, do these few-minute videos, really trying to encourage voters to support Measure E?
Yeah, so first off, we know that as a city employee on duty, I can't promote any kind of measure. In uniform, I can't promote any measure, so I'll qualify everything with that. May limit some of my comments, even though the election has already passed. As a police chief, you have to be able to work with anybody, and so it's generally not wise to back individual candidates, and so that's easy. And I've had friends, people I'm good friends with, ask for an endorsement. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't do that. The exception is because I think that people should be able to look to law enforcement for some insight. The exception is maybe judges, district attorneys, and sheriffs who are elected. I have backed those people in the past, but that generally isn't local city anyway. So I stay away from the individual. In Measure O, way back then, off duty, I did work to support that, and I did the same with Measure E. I think that it's related to what I was talking about earlier, being a kid, being able to invest. We had more and better parks when I was a kid than we do now. I want the city to be able to invest in the future. I want to stop the cuts to public safety. The analogy I use is Oxnard is, every city is made up of families, and many families in Oxnard are just working class, struggling. And so it's not hard to extrapolate to, okay, that's what Oxnard is as a city, working class city. And it's easy for somebody that is middle class, it's easy to come in and say, if you just managed your money better, you would not be in this mess. Most people would agree that telling that to a working class family that is living paycheck to paycheck, that doesn't hold a lot of water. And so, hey, Oxnard, if you just manage all of this mismanagement, if you just manage your money better, we wouldn't be in this mess. I didn't buy that. I do believe in the wisdom of the voters, and everything with every single election. And on this measure, I felt it's if the majority of the residents want to support it, then they're voting for more services. And if they vote against more services, then there's just less services. But we're always, not only us, but every single department in the city is going to provide the best services that we can with the amount of resources that we have.
Thank you for that, Chief. final question, and I had actually had a couple of people ask me about this. Are there any plans in the future to run for sheriff for Ventura County one day?
Uh, uh, no, no. I'm going to. That's the. I love Sheriff Ayub. He's doing a great job. I'm going to decompress. I do. I will say this. Um, I'm always going to be an advocate for Ventura County, but particularly Oxnard. I have an interest in helping and protecting vulnerable populations. Always going to have that. Have an interest, and I think it's in my wheelhouse for public safety. So where that, when you look at all of that, like where that ends up for my next career, I do not know, but I have not thought like that. That would be way out. Like the next election is years away, so I have not thought that far out.
Well, Chief, I appreciate you joining me tonight in this conversation. It has been a pleasure to know you over these years. You have always been somebody that I admire because you really truly show your heart when you truly care about the community, and I always appreciate that. So I will allow you a couple of minutes for your closing statement. Just wrap it all up, and
Yeah, I don't want to get too emotional here. I've been fortunate to work with so many good people in the city. Our officers have such a tough job, and by and large, we do a really good job for our residents. And I've been privileged to have great training officers, great bosses, great mentors, great partners. Did not take like one thing for granted. My time here has gone by way too fast, way too fast. There's a term, the days are long, but the years are short. And I really think that applies to my time here. I have a real deep appreciation for, more so than I ever could if I wasn't there, for the work, the hard work that is done by the city manager and on the fourth floor. It's almost an impossible task that they're asked to do. Same with our council members. The city manager and our council members are probably like the most underappreciated positions. There's like no thanks for those jobs. Our police officers, there was some talk during the elections about pay cuts and this and that, and they did take concessions. Every one of our employees took concessions, but just please remember, we all have to remember that you get what you pay for. Our officers are not, they're below market, and once you get a certain point below market, you're gonna risk getting second tier officers, and we cannot afford to do that. So we always have to keep that in mind. It is super hard for me to leave, but the announcement of Jason as the next chief, that's like, okay, that's one more block off my shoulders. It's like one more thing that's going to make it easier, because just the announcement, and then also knowing that he's going to do a great job. So like I said, I'll be the biggest fan for the city of Oxnard and the Oxnard Police Department. I will know my place, but I will be a fan, and I'm looking forward to the break, and then seeing what the next challenge is. And again, one last thing, Daniel, appreciate the work that you're doing as well. We need more of this type of stuff. I don't think anybody's paying you or no sponsors, just doing it to try to do something positive. And there are a lot of people, and we could use more of it. So thank you.
Yeah, no one's paying. There's no sponsors, but if Starbucks is listening, by all means, I will take the sponsorship from Starbucks. Um, yes, this has been a program that really is just trying to help out the community, really educate the community, bring different guests on, like yourself. A few guests that we've had so far. They've been candidates, but we also have others that jump in there, and this second series that we're having are just more guests that are really going to be able to help Oxnard. So thank you for that, Chief, and thank you for joining me again tonight. I know you're very busy, and you had your meeting with the CLU kids, so very busy nights. And congratulations on the retirement and the outstanding career that you have had over the years serving the Oxnard community.
Thanks, Daniel. And if anybody stayed through the whole 80 minutes, I have some Oxnard, visit Oxnard stuff I can hand out. So send me a Facebook message and tell me some of the highlights, and I'll hook you up with a Visit Oxnard hat or a towel or something. So whoever's on, thank you guys for tuning in and listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Oxnard Police Chief Scott Whitney, and this is Oxnard Live. Be sure to join us on December 3rd as we speak with Nancy Lindholm, the CEO, President of the Oxnard Chamber of Commerce. We'll be speaking with her about the role of the Chamber, how the Chamber has been working to support businesses during this pandemic, and the goal moving forward. That is on December 3rd at 4 p.m. Thank you again to Scott Whitney, our Chief of Police, and happy holidays, everybody. Please, COVID is not gone. So please celebrate Thanksgiving responsibly and safely with your families. And that will do it for us. This is Oxnard Live, all live and 100%. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.